morning, everyone. Usually I tell you a commute story. This morning, I'm just grateful I'm not commuting, and I would invite you to be safe if you have to go out. And this morning, Jackie brought to my mind something that I had thought of previously, but not as explicitly as she brought it to my mind. It is exactly 2 years to the day that after the service, what we sort of casually referred to as the lunch bunch went to the Hamlin Inn for a St. Patty's Day lunch. When I thought about it, I cannot believe that it is only 2 years. It feels more like 20. It feels like life has changed tremendously. And there is a reality to that. It's changed a lot in 2 years. We have been through a lot in 2 years. What does been through a lot in 2 years means? It means that we learned to put masks on. It means that we learned to not hug each other. It means that we learn to worry even more than usual. It means that we hardly went anywhere unless we absolutely had to. And then it changed again. It changed so recently within the last 2 weeks that we had to use a word in conversation that we hadn't used for years and years and years. The word war. And then there was the word inflation. And then there's the word gas prices at the pump. And on it goes. I think the funniest one I saw the other day on TV was that instead of raising the price of an item, they decreased the amount available. And a certain brand of toilet paper roll went from 249 sheets to 224 sheets. Yes, I know, it's laughable. It is laughable, but it is reality. And that's the point. A lot has changed. It's like that line from a movie about sharks. Just when we thought it was safe to go back in the water, it isn't. Or so it seems. Actually, I have to give you the attribution and the credit for my talk title today to Reverend Rosalind, who is experiencing a wonderful event with her family this Sunday, and that's why I'm speaking, and I'm delighted and grateful for that. It was at the end of one of our Wednesday morning classes, which she was able to attend. And we were sort of beginning to sign off. And I think either I or someone else asked her a question. So what are you going to do and she said, I'm just focusing on getting through the next 60 seconds. And a light went off in my head and I blurted out to Mark on the screen. I said, write that down. That's my next talk title for next month. My next talk title for next month. And I found a poem. Well, it's not a poem. I'm sorry. It was something that was said by a congressman, a U.S. congressperson. And I'm not going to identify the person so that it is not partisan. But this person said it at the beginning of the term. Actually, at the beginning of a 20-year career. And I find it really significant. It says this. I have only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it. Forced upon me, can't refuse it, didn't seek it, didn't choose it, but it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I lose it, give account if I abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it. I think it says it all right there, friends. this 60 seconds. 60 seconds is a measure of time. It's a measure of time. We know that there are two kinds of time, and two Greek words define them for us. One is chronos, chronos, which gives us chronology, chronometer, and the word kairos, Kairos. Chronos is measurable time. Seconds, minutes, hours, eons, centuries, what have you. Kairos, Kairos, is a theological term. It means God's time. It is not measured in seconds or minutes. Kairos, we've all had an experience of it when we've sat down and we've started to meditate, and then sometime later we, quote unquote, came back. And it was like, where did I go? How long was I gone for? That is God's time. That is Kairos. That is that suspension of our amazing attachment to our earthliness and our willingness to be in that presence of God, to be infused with that energy, which is the source of all being, and especially our being, as we recognize that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So I'm very grateful to Reverend Rosalind for the talk title. I'm also grateful to another friend. Many years ago, when I was in another church, I was invited by the facilitator of one of the 12-step programs. It was called Emotions Anonymous. And that group was sponsoring a retreat. It was an off-site retreat. We were going to go to a hotel for 2 nights. And she said, would you be the spiritual coordinator for the retreat? And I said, what do I have to do? She said, lead the prayers, lead the meditation, and give a talk. And I said, thank you very much. I would be so pleased to. And I had that wonderful experience. And I'm very glad that that person, and her first name was Rosemary, became a friend. Because sometime later, when I was going through my own personal crisis, I was confused and uncertain and really didn't have a clue about what to do next. And what she said to me was, just do the next right thing. Just do the next right thing. I thought, how do I know what the next right thing is? And I realized that I did know. And that's why I was so pleased when Jackie suggested hymn number 129 this morning, which begins with the line, infinite wisdom guides my way. My path appears as bright as day. God leads me on and gives me strength. Assured I shall arrive at length. That was so significant. Just do the next right thing. I was listening to a radio show the other day. It was on NPR, and it was probably a podcast, except I don't remember the title. But I was fascinated when the speaker started talking about decision exhaustion. Decision exhaustion. And the speaker went on to say that we probably make 30,000 decisions a day. I thought, I wish I could hit rewind, because she didn't really say that, did she? She couldn't have said 30,000 decisions. And no, I couldn't rewind. You can't rewind on the radio. But she repeated it more than once, 30,000 decisions. And I thought about it. I thought, yeah, right from the very moment when we wake up in the morning, we're already making a decision. Do I get up, or do I roll over and go back to sleep? Okay, if I don't get up, do I turn on the radio, Do I turn on a light and read? Or in my case, do I snuggle up next to the cat? And then after we've made that decision, it's, do we wear our bedroom slippers? Do we not wear our bedroom slippers? And on and on and on. And I never really thought of those things as decisions, but they are. We think decisions start when we walk into the kitchen and go, okay, how many cups of coffee shall I make this morning? You know what? Today feels like a 3-cup day. Most of the time, I go slightly beyond 2 cups in my electric teapot. It says you have to go beyond that minimum. And however much coffee that makes, that's how much I drink. And then, well, should it be toast for breakfast or scrambled eggs? Or, I don't know, maybe I should go out for breakfast. Do you begin to see how our entire day is made up of decisions? And that by the end of it, we are exhausted. And I've been doing a lot of reading recently on brain science, and our life has not gone any simpler by some of the technology. Well, should I sit at my computer? Should I sit at my iPad? Which of my feeds should I get into? Should I put in my earbuds and listen to X, Y, and Z? And on and on and on. In fact, it's been determined that watching a screen and the flitting images on it activates our brain the same way it did thousands of years ago when we were primitive man and we were always scanning. Is that a friend? Is that a foe? Is that a wild animal? Or is that something I can eat? That's why we're so tired. Isn't that amazing? Why we're so tired after hours on the computer that was supposed to make our life so much better. So what do we do? What do we do with this decision exhaustion? Well, the first thing is we have our spiritual principles. Our spiritual principles, as interpreted by the Fillmores in our unity expression, is so profound that I am daily grateful that I discovered them and that I have followed them for years. Those principles, those spiritual principles, that there is a divine order in the universe. In fact, this morning as I was listening to On Being on NPR, there was a scientist who was talking about that very thing. He said, some people believe this and some people believe that, and I don't want to offend anyone who believes in God or doesn't believe in God, but the theory that a thing, a being, an energy made the universe and then walked away is not really correct. It is an ongoing expression. So it's, in spiritual terms, it would be God present to us. God present to us. Divine order means that there is a purpose in all things. A purpose in all things. For every season, there is a reason. If we look at nature, then after a period of great growth and fruition, which is spring and summer, we need a time of rest and recovery. So we end up with 4 seasons. And that's true for us as well. There's some other great ideas that we have, some other good ideas. And some of you will recognize this one. It comes from some of our recovery groups. Has anyone ever heard the word HALT? HALT. I have. It stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And of course, the way this word was used was if you become too angry, too hungry, too angry, too lonely, and too tired, and you are in danger you are in spiritual danger of losing your way. Call a friend, call a sponsor, call someone and speak to them. Let's look at these 4 words, because on the surface, we all know what hunger means. It's like, wow, I've missed lunch. It's time for me to eat. Or, good heavens, was that growly noise in my stomach telling me that it's too late? I better go and eat something. There is physical hunger, friends, but there is also a spiritual hunger. And in this last 2 years of no lunch bunches at the Hamlin Inn, no hugs, no schmoozing downstairs as we picked over the lovely delights of the fellowship table. Or even worse, no hugging our beloveds, no visiting our grandchildren, none of the things that we were able to do. We have a hunger for connection with one another. We have a hunger for connection with one another. And it's good. Many of us did. We picked up the phone. We learned how to call. We learned how to be present to one another. We pick up the phone and call and say, I'm going down to Trader Joe's or Fresh Time or wherever you go and do your shopping. Do you need anything? I'll leave it on the porch steps. When did we ever leave things on the porch steps? Well, really long time ago, the milkman left bottles of milk on the porch steps. That hasn't happened in a very long time, and not for the same reason. So we are emotionally hungry. Are we angry? Are we angry? Of course we're angry. We're angry that restrictions were placed on our lives. We were angry that people we knew and loved became ill, and we suffered as they suffered, and people that we knew and loved made their transition to the next life experience. And all the while, an invisible thing, something under a microscope, was driving our lives. Of course, we became angry. And we became inwardly angry, but that's a lot harder. Walking around going, excuse me, God, did you really intend this? Did you really intend this? And what is this purpose? What is the purpose of this pandemic? What is it going to serve? And as we were hungry and as we were angry, of course, we were lonely. Many of us who live alone were lonelier than ever. Do you know that the rate of animal adoption rose significantly? Most people adopted dogs. A, because dogs are fun. B, it meant they could go outside and they could take a walk. It was a legitimate excuse to be outdoors. I will tell you truthfully that my little Dizzy was the companion of my life, that sweet little baby. In fact, he amused me enormously yesterday. I've often told you about something that I do sometimes once in a while. I have what I call a genius day in bathrobe. I get up, brush my teeth, comb my hair, put on real shoes, but I never get out of my bathrobe. I do all kinds of work, but I never get out of my bathrobe. I think Dizzy had one of those days yesterday. He doesn't wear a bathrobe, but he never seemed to get off the fluffy cover on my bed. I think he had a kitty pajama day. And I'd run in, look at him every now and then, give him a little kiss, give him a little pat. It assuages our loneliness, friends. But there is an overarching concept that we need to understand here. We may be lonely, but we are not alone. Because we live and move and have our being in the presence of God, as the presence of God. And this is the unifying foundation, the unifying factor in all humanity. It is why so many of us, as we hear the news of this strange word, war between Ukraine and Russia, and it startles us, it terrifies us, it disturbs us greatly. And all of these things have made us tired. We are tired in ways that a good night's rest does not restore us to well-being. We are tired. We are tired. We're tired physically. A lot of us weigh 5, 10, 15, 20 pounds more than we did. Our doctors are unhappy with the fact that we're not moving, that our stats have changed. And we're unhappy too. We are tired of what is, and we desire a way to cope with this. And so we have those spiritual principles, prayers, affirmations, and meditation. So when we're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired in that now moment, what is the next best thing to do? If you're physically hungry, maybe you should eat something. No, certainly you mean something more important than that, Reverend Linda. You just don't mean go into the kitchen, find an apple, or put a glob of hummus on a carrot stick and eat that. Yes, I do. Yes, I do, friends, because the first thing we need to do is to check in with ourselves, to be present to ourselves. How can we be present to others if we have not first honored ourselves? It does say, love thy neighbor as thyself, which implies that we are loving enough of ourselves. So maybe the first thing is go and eat. And I'm going to really be blunt here. Maybe the first next right thing, folks, is go to the bathroom. Yeah. We sit around going, oh no, I'll do that later. It's the most logical, intelligent thing to restore us to our physical well-being. And what if you're angry? Well, I can tell you from firsthand experience that running around the house yelling at the television does absolutely nothing. So the first thing would be turn off the TV, turn off the radio, close the newspaper, put down that deadly little weapon, folks. Just put it down. Put it down. And then calm ourselves. Calm ourselves. Remembering our hymn, I clothe myself safely round with infinite love and wisdom. And if we don't have if we don't have God with skin on, maybe we have God with fur on. And so we can do that. And our loneliness can be assuaged by remembering we are one within all of humanity. And tired. Well, one of the best things for tiredness is a good deep breath. You may be surprised by this, friends, but if upon arising in the morning, if you have a sheltered doorway, sheltered, I mean you're not going to be rained on or snowed on, or your neighbors aren't going to see you in your bathrobe, or if you don't care whether your neighbors see you in your bathrobe, stand outdoors, stand straight, and take 5 deep breaths in and out. I guarantee you in 18-degree weather, it will wake you up. It wakes me up. And then we may say a prayer within our heart, whatever prayer it is. You can say a rote prayer like the Lord's Prayer. You can say any prayer that we like or just a few words. We can speak an affirmation. And I would take that first line of our hymn today. Infinite wisdom guides my way. whatever comes before me in the next 60 seconds, I am equal to. There's something else, friends. It's that our assurance here, that we are here for a purpose. We are here for a purpose, to know, love, and serve God, but we are here for a purpose. And how that expression takes form in our lives can be very interesting. I have a short scripture story, which I'm going to relate as a story rather than read. It's a little too long to read, and most people haven't read it anyway. It's what's called the Book of Esther, sometimes called the Megillah of Esther. This is a period of time thousands of years ago when the Israelite people were living in an area called Shushan, Iran. It is where modern day Iran is. The Israelite people lived there. They lived in harmony. There was a ruler, and that's what happens next. The ruler was, he was a little foolish. He asked his very lovely wife to come and dance for his friends. This is, years and years and years ago when they had banquets and stuff like that. Except he asked her to dance in an unseemly way, and she said no. And he behaved like a bit of a jerk and said, well, then you're not my wife anymore, and he divorced her. Her name was Vashti. Then he began looking around for a new wife, and he looked around and he found the most beautiful woman in the land. Her name was Esther. And he invited her to the palace. And Esther became one of the ruler's wives, maybe his favorite. Now what he didn't know was that Esther was of the Israelite people. She kept that quiet. She was a good wife. And one day she overheard an evil counselor advising the ruler to slaughter all the Israelite people. She did a smart thing. She went and told her uncle. She went and told her uncle Mordecai. Well, today we would have called him Uncle Morty, but back then he was Uncle Mordecai. And Mordecai went and explained to the ruler what was transpiring. And the ruler did not listen to the evil counselor, and peace was restored. And what Mordecai said to his niece, to Esther, was, who knows, perhaps you were here for this moment in time. That's what I would say to us today, friends. Each of us is here in this moment in time, not just the moment of Chronos, sequential time, but the moment in Kairos, which is God's time. We would ask ourselves, what am I to do? How am I to do this? Well, I've already described to you our spiritual principles. But I found something else written by an Indian poet and philosopher. His name is Patanjali, Patanjali. I'm not sure what century he wrote in. This was forwarded to me by a friend, but it gives us good advice. It says, undisturbed calmness of mind is attained by cultivating friendliness toward the happy, compassion for the unhappy, delight in the virtuous, and indifference toward the wicked. Let's take a look at that for a moment. Undisturbed calmness, the peace that passes understanding, as promised us in Scripture, is attained by cultivating friendliness toward the happy. Yeah, if you got a bunch of friends that are happy, we all know this. It's much nicer than to have a bunch of grouches around. Cultivate friendship towards the happy, but do not exclude the unhappy. For them, we develop compassion, which is to be understanding of why they may be unhappy. And we offer them compassion and care. And then it says delight in the virtuous. That means delight in people who are polite, nice, well-mannered, and are generally good neighbors. Generally good neighbors, as Jesus said, love thy neighbor as thyself, and went on to expand that our neighbor is whomever we happen to be with in that now moment. And perhaps the one that needs the most exploration is an indifference toward the wicked. Well, I think we all have understandings of what wicked could be. We could look at our world today and we could say, oh yes, I could see wickedness there. But we do not cultivate indifference. What we cultivate is discernment. Because that hymn that we sang this morning also said, God leads me on and gives me strength. Assured I shall arrive at the length. And then it also says, it's love divine that prospers me, health and all good abundantly, with substance rich, and my life is blessed. And in God's care, I find sweet rest. Actually, Jesus summed that up when he said to one of the apostles as they were carping about something, what is that to thee? Follow thou me. And so we take that example. We do not allow ourselves to be disturbed by the evil and the wickedness that we see in the world. Rather, we focus on compassion. We focus on generosity. We focus on being that calm, still presence in the world. And if that's what we do in the next 60 seconds, then we certainly will have known, loved, and served God in those 60 seconds. We will not have wasted them in any way.